In 1998, David Lim led the first Singapore Everest expedition, a man from a flat tropical island nation. Taking on the tallest peak on Earth, he was tested, challenged, beaten, yet ultimately triumphant. But the highest high quickly turned to the lowest low. 1 week after his victorious return from Everest, David was struck by a rare nerve disorder. Discover how David made his comeback from total paralysis and disability to the great peaks once again. Here now, with lessons from Everest, David Lim.
About dreams. How many of you here have a dream? Yes! Now, if you will hear your dreams, will be here all day. And I've had many dreams. And what I'm going to share with you today is really about how do you find a dream? And when you have that dream, how do you bring it into reality? In that process, you're going to be working with other people, which is challenging at times. How do you do that well? And these are really the components of this session. Lessons from Everest, leading others. And I'd like to start with this photograph of me climbing a virgin peak. These are peaks in the world which have never been climbed by human beings. They remain nameless, most of them. And a lot of time, they offer mystery and challenge. We'll get back to that in a minute. But first, I think the most popular question people like me often get asked is, why climb? Often, you don't get paid for it. I mean, if you're an amateur climber, who's going to pay you to climb mountains? You sleep rough. You don't eat very well sometimes. There are scary moments in the climb. And very often, you don't bathe for extended periods. My record is 64 days. Don't worry, after about a week, all of you in the team smell the same. And my reason why I climb is because I'm fascinated in discovering what I'm truly capable of. And the trick is to find that invisible line in which you get close to that line, but not cross that line. Because sometimes if you cross that line, you may die. And then this is the fascination of climbing, but it's also a fascination of people who climb and have dreams of climbing bigger, harder, and more challenging things. All of you sitting in here today have some kind of dream, but that dream will involve some degree of challenge in there. So you need to ask yourself, why do I do what I do? So about 10 years ago, a team and I went to a place in Kyrgyzstan where there were Virgin Mountains. I talked about Virgin Mountains, and you can see in the background peaks that we climbed some years earlier. And when you go there, it's wonderful. You know, the helicopter drops you in there because you're about 90 kilometers from the nearest road. And as it leaves, you turn to each other and you realize that you're together for the next 2 weeks. And that's not a time when somebody turns to the other and says, did you remember to bring the can opener? Because there's no 7-Eleven around the corner, right, to get something if you've forgotten it. And the weather's good, you climb the mountain, you feel fantastic, but the next day, you climb another mountain, you try to climb another mountain, but the weather is absolutely awful. Snowing, nobody wants to get out of the tent. What do you do? Now, if you want to learn the end of the story, stay tuned, because I'll tell you what happened to this story at the end of the session. But again, mountains fascinate. What fascinates you? What drives your dreams? More than 20 years ago, we had a dream to put a team from Singapore on Mount Everest. As you can know from this photo, these are our great mountains in Singapore. We have no real mountains here. And so when the newspapers ran the articles, 10 climbers wanted for Everest, it's almost like a hopeful advertisement, wanted 10 brave souls for daring adventure. Salary none, working conditions harsh, food poor, prospect of return slim. Which Singaporean on earth would want to sign up for a project like that? And don't forget, we're in a flat tropical city. So here's one of the few points I want to share with you today. I think there's power in sharing a stretch goal. And this is a goal that's going to push you and your people, not in a ridiculous manner, but it's going to push you far enough that you can find out what you're truly capable of. And for all of you sitting here, I don't care whether you're a builder, achiever, executive director, at some stage or the other, you'll be setting yourself some stretch goals for the coming year or next 2 years. How is that going to push your team? And there's power in that, because if you find the right people who are motivated and committed, they're ready for a stretch goal. If they're not, don't give them a stretch goal, because they're not ready for that. So for 4 years, we put together this plan to raise the money, to train, to get a group of people who didn't know each other very well to climb Mount Everest. And I think the next key thing that we need to think about when we set ourselves stretch goals is after we set those goals, we need to set ourselves and give ourselves a chance to take massive action. Because massive action is what's going to create results, not half-hearted changes here and there, adjustments here and there, but I'm talking about massive action. So here's me in another life climbing a frozen waterfall in Korea, because you don't have snow and ice in Singapore, except in your desert bowl. And that led to years of training on rock, on ice in other countries. And I think a lot of people ask this question: how do I motivate my people, David? Here's the bad news: you can't. Motivation is intrinsic, it's in someone. It's not something that you can do to someone, but you can create this environment that makes people want to work harder with a smile, do their best, and that's creating an environment in which they thrive. And that environment is not necessarily an easy one. And here's a picture of us having climbed the highest building in Singapore several times through the staircase wells with 15 kilos on our backs. Hot, sweaty, uncomfortable, but everybody felt highly motivated. So, as a leader, and I'm talking to a lot of people who are executive directors, for example, if you are working with others, this is how you motivate them. You create this environment that makes people around you thrive. And eventually, we got a chance to work together as a team by going to India. And I thought, jumping rivers like this, climbing the mountain would be the most dangerous things, until we arrived in India and we got to New Delhi, and then we came across these. These are the most dangerous things you can find there. But we were soon in the mountains, but even then the challenges didn't stop. Deep snow, bad weather, eventually we had to give up the climb of the mountain we had planned to climb for 9 months and try to climb this other mountain next to it. Putting a camp in a place that no one had been to and forcing our way through an ice fall. Ultimately, we were unsuccessful. But more importantly, I realized that having a stretch goal and having a team wasn't enough. This is a wonderful concept called managing and leading people, and sometimes difficult people. People begin to behave selfishly on the mountain, on the team, and you'd be surprised what they were. Some of them were saving their strength. They were not doing the work that should have been done because they wanted others to do more work so they could be fresher for any attempt on the summit. As you can imagine, this is very disappointing at that time. But eventually you get to understand that you have to find what motivates them, what really drives them, the why you do what you do. And then you find a way for them to channel that energy. Ultimately, we returned to the capital of that area, Leh, very disappointed, until we saw this mountain about 3 days away, Costa Cangri. Defeat faced us with 5 days left, and someone said, you can go and climb the mountain and come back in about a 3-day trip, 3 very long days. And so we did. And that's when people in the team were selfish, they too woke up. And they realized that if they continued behaving this way, nobody would achieve the group goal. And that's when they begin to change their behaviors. They may have been selfish people, they may be still selfish people, but they changed their behaviors, and different outcomes happened. So whenever you see a picture like this picture of me standing on the very summit of that mountain, You don't often see that long struggle it took to get up there. And I think this was our first expedition together, and one that we learned a lot from. So here's what I learned about creating a winning culture in a team. Number one, the environment, I talked about that. And the next one are SOBs. You know what SOBs are, sir? SOBs, oh come on, I think you know what they are, right? But no, not those kind, not those kind. Every office may have one, hopefully it's not you. SOBs refer to specific observable behaviors. That means if we want to achieve something, let's identify the behaviors that will support that. Let's say improve sales results. Okay, maybe the behaviors that support that will be making more calls, improving your presentation skills, being more persuasive. Once you can identify those behaviors, whether you want to climb Mount Everest or not, the next thing is then, can we observe the behaviors? Can we notice the people in your team doing that? Now, of course, these things must be behaviors. They can't be thoughts, promises, or intentions. So I think one of the key things of creating this culture of winning in a team is that we have to focus not on personalities, but on SOBs. Things we can identify that lead to success, things that we can observe that lead to success, and behaviors that support all of these. And last but not least, is the conversations we have with each other. The fierce dialogues on the mountain, talking to people. Why are you like this? What's happening? What's on your mind? And I say fierce because these are not angry conversations we're having on the mountain. They're intense dialogues between two people who care a lot about something. So a fierce dialogue can be between you and an associate, can be between you and a potential customer. Intense conversations. If you keep everything at a very superficial, hello, how are you, you will not get the kind of results you want from your team. I guarantee you this. And then what about, third point, the least striking results. So here we are trying to put a team to climb Mount Everest. Now Mount Everest is nearly 9,000 meters above sea level. Here's the problem. You're stuck in Singapore. Highest mountain? Yes. Bukit Timah is 16,400 centimeters. Sounds more impressive, right? With the zeros at the end. Centimeters. So there's a very big gap really between where you are and where you want to go. But I tell you that gap is not a gap of funding, it's not a gap of equipment, it's a gap that's based on beliefs. Once you believe you can climb Mount Everest, once you believe you can achieve your dream, guess what happens? Every day you wake up, your behaviors are different. And then you get different thoughts about your goal. And then you get different results. So if you're not getting the results you're getting, sure you can do more of this, do more of that, but try going all the way back to what do we fundamentally believe about this thing we want to achieve. Because if the belief is strong and good and based on actual things and actual confidence building measures, the thoughts will change, the results will be different. So finally, after 3 or 4 years of training and many expeditions and raising nearly $1 million, we get to Mount Everest. Now, I can't tell you how impressive it is seeing something that's 10,000 feet above your head. You're standing on a 5,000 meter ridge. There's snow in the sky. And 10 kilometers away from you, you see this massive top half of Mount Everest. And I tell you this, it's impressive. That white cloud you see coming from the top, that isn't cloud. Those are billions of snow crystals blown off the top of the mountain by hurricane-force winds. And from a distance, you can hear it go. You can hear it sound like a 747 jet at a distance. And 8 climbers from flat, tropical Singapore are standing there. Nobody says anything at all. We're just staring at this thing. And then some idiot opens his mouth and says, "Wow, so big." Okay, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, it's difficult. I know he was just articulating what all of us thought. It's big, but there's a way of achieving that kind of goal. All right. So here's a picture of us after that rather messy Indian expedition 3 years earlier. This is a picture of us on Everest. Again, watch this. 1995. 1998. Creating the right team is a process. It sometimes takes time. So here are the 5 C's of teams. When someone told me, how do I select people for a team to go to Everest, right? Here's this. They have the commitment, competence, and compatibility. You can't have two and not have one. Like, for example, if you don't have compatibility, somebody's committed, they're good at what they do, but guess what? They are pain in the so-and-so to get along with. But since then, I've noticed there are two more C's. One is that we really need to spend time communicating what we wish done and what others feel about that in a team. And then that isn't easy. We need this. We need everyday courage to tell somebody what we're really thinking about their plans. Now, you can develop a skill where you can say something that's not necessarily pleasant, but needs to be said. This is part of the fierce dialogues tip I gave you earlier. The 5 C's that make fantastic teams. Ask me questions about it later if you want to. And then when you start climbing that mountain, how do you know whether you're getting close to that goal? Right, from base camp, you go to camp 1, higher up, to the dangerous icefall. You put equipment, you come back. You go to camp 2, you put more equipment, you come back down, you rest, you keep on going. So climbing Everest isn't a continuous journey. It's only a continuous journey is after all the camps have been in position with supplies, and then when the weather is good, you make a 5-day push up to the summit. Summit day is about 15 hours through the night. And then, hopefully with luck, you come back in one piece. So it's so important to assess your checkpoints on every part of the journey. This person did not make it back home. We found his bones fairly near base camp. This American friend of mine had frostbite injury. You can see the huge blisters forming from the nerve, from the tissue damage. He was lucky he managed to keep all his fingers. And of course, the most popular question I ask on climbing Everest is, believe it or not, how do you guys do it up there? I don't know why they're fascinated by this. I think astronauts get the same question. And it's like this, up high on a mountain, it's a cold and brutal affair. You drop your windproof pants when you need to do it, you squat down in a small trench in the snow and ice, and then you do your business as fast as possible. Because if you don't, there's often a freezing cold wind blowing snow up the mountain, sandblasting your bare buttocks. But at base camp, as my friend Edwin here is doing, it's much more civilized. You can do it over plastic barrels, and when it's time for you on your rest days at base camp to go and do your business, you climb up the stone steps, slabs of stone stacked up to what we call the throne room. Because underneath there's a plastic barrel, so we contain the human waste in a more environmentally friendly fashion, and it's taken away later. But I can guarantee you this is like the best toilet in the world. Yes, even better than a nice air-conditioned one. Say, okay, here's the reason why. Number one, as I mentioned, it's air-conditioned 24/7. Number two, no one's going to come knocking on the door to ask you to hurry up. There is no door. And the third and most important reason I think why it's the best toilet in the world, as you're squatting there doing your business, you look up, and it's like the most fantastic view from any toilet in the world. But why am I sharing these stories about life on Everest? And it's because in anything that we want, there's a price to be paid. The key question is that whether you and your team are willing to pay that price to achieve your dream. That's the key thing. Are you willing to achieve that? And then climbing the mountain finally, coming to grips with it, right? Struggling with the ladders on the ice fall, helmets, falling ice. So I'm not there with my team. I'm not there holding their hand all the time. And neither are you. You set your teams off, you train them, you try to inspire them, and they're going to do their stuff. So think about this. You have to find people who are willing to lead themselves first. You have to lead yourselves as leaders before you can lead others. What's in the backpack? Which side do you put the ice axe when you're climbing up on the ice wall, on the fixed rope section? Because you don't need your ice axe there, do you? It's all about those little details. All the little details. I remember when I used to be taking some of, what's that wonderful product you have? The essentials, multivitamins, right? When you have your 8M packs, your PM packs, right? And it's so lovely and organized. And that's what you want to achieve as well on the mountain. Organization. What do you think that is hanging off the backpack? What do you think that is hanging? Anyone got the guesses? What is that? Yes, but it's a water bottle, but it's not really meant for water. It's your pee bottle. Everyone knows, but you still don't know what I'm talking about, right? When it's minus 20 degrees outside your tent, you don't want to go out your warm tent just to go have a pee. So you pee in this pee bottle and then you empty it out on the other side of the tent. Because the front end of the tent is where you collect snow to put in your pot to melt over your stove to get water to hydrate yourself while you're climbing the mountain. In very popular campsites, we have a saying, don't eat the yellow snow. Don't eat the yellow snow. Now, for the guys here, pay attention for a moment. There are 3 important rules about using these pee bottles. Number 1, make sure the opening is big enough. Number 2, make sure the lid is completely watertight. And third most important rule is make sure in the middle of the night, in your dark tent, that you can find by touch alone and tell the difference between the water bottle and the pee bottle. Accidents have happened. Women climbing Mount Everest use exactly the same system. How they actually do it, I have no idea. So here's a picture of us again having a comfortable day at base camp, away from the rigors of the mountain, having lunch, and that's me checking email. Yes, you still can't get away from email at 5,000 meters. So this is a great picture where, you know, that wonderful importance I talked about, communication. This is where you share ideas, go over things for the coming next climb up the mountain, and this is where the intra-team partnerships, what happens within your closest team, that's where it all matters. And then there's something I want to call inter-team partnerships. How well do you deal with people outside your immediate circle? The other groups, your other associates. They have their own downlines. How do you deal with them? And success on Everest is not only just the quality of how you work with your own teammates, it's how you work with the other people who are on the mountain at the same time. And that's, by the way, I'm not chairing this meeting, but we're halfway up the mountain and we're discussing the tactics for the final stage of climbing the mountain. And here there are at least 4 or 5 different big teams involved in contributing ideas, equipment, and resources. So intra and inter-team partnerships, that's what works on Everest. And finally, by late May, we were all ready to go for the summit. Pushing up for the summit, I was leading the team, and then at a critical stage, you crack 2 ribs, just here. You're in excruciating pain. At Camp 2, you're lying in a tent and you can't even sit up because it's so painful. And then slowly but surely, your personal dream of climbing Everest goes. And it's a very disappointing sensation and experience until you ask yourself this wonderful question. So Dave, what do you want now? So Jim, what do you want now? It's a wonderful question to ask yourself because it's a question that demands an answer that lies in the near future. And I realized, well, I still want the team to be successful. And that's when I began to get energized and motivated once more. My own personal dream was over, but the team's dream was still alive. So the rest of the team continued without me. Young Edwin took my place. They got to this point called the South Summit of Everest with 40 other climbers from around the world. And nobody wanted to make a move over the difficult Hillary Step, as it was called then, to the true summit. But 1.5 hours of climbing, just 150 meters only to the top of the world. Why? All the teams that run out of rope, teams that promised to bring rope, had not brought rope. Yes, sometimes people let you down. But sometimes some people don't let you down. Some other teams brought rope, but it's still not enough to protect that whole section. Because the lead climbers will position and pin the rope down using screws and aluminium pegs, so others climbing behind would clip into this safety rope. But by that time, you couldn't go down, disengage the rope you had put earlier, and bring it back up. So all the teams were here wondering what to do next. Nobody wanted to do that final section without being clipped into a safety rope. Nobody wanted to be a dead hero, because let's face it, on some sections of that knife-edge ridge, can you imagine you climbing it like that? If the wind picks up and blows you off that knife-edge ridge, you fall off on the left, you're going to tumble about 2,000 meters to where my tent is, and I'm wondering, why are you back from lunch so early? If the wind picks you and throws you on the right side, you go 3,000 meters down the Kangshung face into Tibet. 2 things will happen. One, the Chinese will be very unhappy because your visa is only good for Nepal. Next, you have a lot of time to think about things as you go down 3,000 meters. Like, boy, this is really gonna hurt. So everybody turned back that day. So as leaders of teams, I guarantee you this, you will face setbacks. You will face disappointments. If you're not facing setbacks on your journey, you are not trying hard enough. And this is where the radio call went around. And I tell you something, right? It's a radio call that was very emotional. People were spread out different parts of the mountain, and we were discussing about what happens next. And somebody said this is the first Singapore Mount Everest expedition. We must give this a second go. Boy, I could have said that, but I'm so glad someone else did, and you know why? Okay, let's see now. How many executive directors are sitting here? Executive directors? Directors? Quite a few of them. Achievers? All of you know this. Sometimes it's exhausting being the big person in the room. Come on, you're smiling. You know what it feels like, right? Everyone looks to you, right? When someone on the team says what everyone is feeling, it means that you have chosen, you have nurtured the right team. Someone comes up to you and says, don't worry, boss, I got this. That's the kind of team you want to build. You want to build a team of winners. The wrong leaders are those who want to build a team of people who will never be as good as them. You know why? They're desperately interested to hang on to power. So the team put together a second attempt. And that's where you have to be really clear about who goes, who do you select. That's for another session. But you have to be very clear about your intentions of that day. And that day was to get at least one person on that mountain and down safely. Back home already, what was the white noise, the distractions? The newspapers are printing stories blaming us for not bringing enough rope. They have no idea that climbing Everest these days is a collaborative effort. Did the team need to know that? They didn't. So on May 24th, Ed and Sui left very early, like midnight, climbing through the night, and just before 6 o'clock, we were all done at base camp already. I had my ribs taped up. We heard the radio crackle to life. It was Ed's voice. And all he said was, I think I've reached the vertical end of the earth. And we were jumping up and down for joy because we knew exactly where he was standing, on the top of the world. Now, I love this picture for selfish reasons. You see the ice axe from which the Singapore flag is flying? That ice axe is my ice axe. And you can't see it in this picture, but the crampons, the metal spikes strapped to his boots, they're also my crampons. So what had happened? Before he left, he was the youngest guy on the team, I think. We looked at each other's equipment and I said, you know what, Ed, your ice axe and your crampons together are more than 1 kilo heavier than my set. Why don't you take my set in case you're going for the summit next week, and I'll take your set, I'll climb down the mountain with my injury. Now, let me ask you this. How important do you think it is a saving is of 1 kilo of excess weight to an Everest climber? Quite a bit, some of you are thinking, yeah. To this day, I don't know. He was so fit that day, there was no wind on the mountain that day, perfect conditions, but that's not the point. The point is, how much resources do you give each other in Usana? If you want the other person to be as successful or more successful than you, imagine the kind of teams you can build today. And so, we come to this, right? We often get challenged about price and value. People say, oh, your product is good, but it's rather expensive. How many of you get that? Your product is good, but it's expensive. You get that right. It gives a story, you can tell that. Okay, right now, how many of you have in your wardrobe now a piece of clothing that at the time when you bought it was because it was a bargain. It was on sale. How many of you got a piece of clothing like that? Yeah, you have a lot. You have a lot there. But you know what? After 1 or 2 times of wearing that item of clothing, you stop wearing it. Why? Maybe it doesn't fit you so well. You don't like the fabric. You washed it 3 times, it doesn't look so good anymore. How many of you have that kind of piece of clothing in your wardrobe? Come on, my hand is up to you. Now, in your wardrobe is another piece of clothing as well. That at the time you bought it, you paid a bit too much for it. But when you take it out and you wear that, you look yourself in the mirror, oh, you look good. You might even look hot. How many of you have got a piece of clothing like that in your wardrobe? Yes, thank you. That's the difference between price and value. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. Never forget that. And that's what we tried to make the Singapore public understand. That this wasn't an expedition you could measure just in dollars. And it cost quite a bit of money. It's about allowing a nation to dream about what was possible when a group of people who, by the way, half the time didn't like each other very much, come together and climb the world's highest mountain. So we are back many years later on that mountain in Kyrgyzstan. The weather is crappy. One of your team members doesn't want to go out. You're sitting there and wondering what to do. And your friend turns to you and says, Dave, mountains aren't climbed while sitting inside a tent. Let me repeat this. Mountains aren't climbed while sitting inside a tent. I said, you're right, let's go. So we went and we climbed. Every hour, we checked in with each other. How are you doing? How are the conditions? Too dangerous, not too dangerous? And then at 7 o'clock, something wonderful happened. The clouds parted, the sun came out. And it was the most fabulous day of climbing so far that week. I mean, look at that. So what we did was that, hang on. So we got to the top of that, called it Resilience Peak, and there's another peak across the valley, which had never been climbed yet. We went down and we had what we call a fierce dialogue with our other partner, and 2 days later, we went for that unnamed peak 5152. And that peak at that time then became the highest virgin mountain climbed by any Southeast Asian mountaineer, and we named it Majula Peak. So my question to you before running the final videos is this. What tent are you still sitting inside? What tent you need to come out of so you can go out and climb that mountain ahead of you? So here's a thought I want to leave with you, right? You'll never get everything you want in life. The people who win are those who make use of everything they already have today. So before I go, a couple of things. Stay in touch. I love social media, and I'm going to leave you with this video to help inspire you to greater heights in the coming year.
This concludes this morning's session. Don't miss this evening's exciting Recognizing You award ceremony featuring recording artist Colin Ray. We'll recognize USANA's top leaders for their prestigious achievements, including the unveiling of this year's